Hey everyone, I'm Anya Esma, and today I want to talk to you about how I decide whether I'm buying a new deck or not. I want to give you some questions that you can reflect on to figure out whether you are just in love with the artist of a deck, with the art, or whether you actually truly connect with the tarot deck. So it is no deck November right now, which means that a lot of people are holding off on buying new tarot decks. However, once December rolls around, we'll all go back to our wish lists and figure out which ones we want to buy really badly. And I just want to share some of the questions that I ask myself to, get to the core of whether you actually have a connection with a deck or you are just drawn to it for one specific card or because of the artist, etc. So let's talk about this. So the first question is fairly obvious, but stick with me here. Why are you drawn to the deck? There is a variety of reasons this could be the case. Maybe there's a hype going on around the deck. Maybe you are just in love with the artist. You have supported them. They have been nice to you. Maybe you love the artwork. Maybe there is one card that really spoke to you. Or maybe you just like the theme because you are having issues in your relationship right now, so you want to have a deck that sort of pertains to relationship issues, and helps you solve those. Now, identifying what draws you to a deck and what need you have is very important, and being honest with yourself about this. Because for me personally, it happens quite a lot that I see a deck that I really love the artwork of, but then when I'm honest with myself, I look through all of the cards and they all look a little bit the same, you know what I mean? Not just in style, but also the vibe that they give me is very similar in every card. And I think tarot decks, at least for me, live through having very different atmospheres and different aspects in each card. So having a very clear artistic kind of direction that doesn't allow me to have a lot of fantasy, but I just look at them and I'm like, this card is beautiful, that one, that one, that one, that one, that's not quite what a good deck is to me, even though I would love looking at them. And of course, if I want a deck to just put on my altar or to just look at, maybe that's the right deck to buy. But I think that's a trap that some of us fall into, where we just really like an artist, or we just really like one specific image, or we really like their style. But then we don't even really look at the cards. We don't give ourselves a chance to connect with them. So if you are encountering an issue like that, where you're noticing, if I'm honest, it is just because of the hype that I want this deck, then get it back to yourself. Just don't look at all the pretty Instagram pictures or Facebook pictures or YouTube videos about it. Sit down, take one image off of Google image search or Instagram or whatever, and pathwork with the card. If you're not familiar with pathworking, you just sit with the image in the card and you meditate with it. You go into it. You fantasize about being in that card, talking to the entity in the card, and seeing what comes of it. And I think this is a great way to find out whether you actually connect to the atmosphere of a deck. Ideally, you want to do this with multiple cards to figure out whether it's just that one card that you love or whether you like a lot of them. Now, don't get me wrong. If you have difficulties with some cards in a deck, that's awesome. That is something to work on with that deck. It's something to connect with. But I'm just saying there are fundamentally some atmospheres or some artworks that just don't work for us. They don't do anything for us. Maybe they are boring, not necessarily because they are scary or we aren't ready for them, but maybe we just feel like, no, that's an old part of ourselves that we are kind of done with, you've done the work. So just because you don't like an image doesn't mean that it wouldn't be good for you to work with it, which is why this exercise is very productive, I feel like, because it shows you exactly how well you connect with one or more cards from this deck. Because finding something aesthetically pleasing and getting actual input from it, like spiritual input, it does make a difference, at least for me. There is a difference between the two. You can find something beautiful, but maybe it is just because you are so used to its beauty or used to that aesthetic. It doesn't give you anything new, anything to work on, if you know what I mean. Now, the second question you can ask yourself is, what do you actually want it for? What are you going to use this deck for? For example, is it a shadow work deck? Is it a relationship deck that you want to use with your partner? Is it something you honestly just want to hang on a wall? Do you just want to have it in your collection just for the sake of having it? Or do you want to do inner child work with it? There's so many things you can do with tarot, or maybe you think it has just the right art to inspire you for the plot of your new novel. And that's why you want to buy it, to kind of do readings with it and inspire yourself for the book that you are writing. Now, the way to remedy this, or to figure out whether you actually need that new deck, is if you didn't buy it, which deck of the ones that you have right now would you use in order to do that work? Because oftentimes we are just drawn to something new because we feel that something old wouldn't quite cut it. But honestly, if you do try, if you do take up a deck that you haven't looked at in a year and start working with it, maybe you have done intense shadow work with that deck a year ago and you feel like you can't look at it anymore. I understand that, of course. But maybe for you individually, going back to something old is just what you need, and kind of delving into those energies again. And figuring that out, which deck you would replace it with that you already have, is very helpful. So essentially, you want to reignite that passion for an old deck, and you also want to figure out which deck can fill the role that you are looking for. Because often when we feel a need for something, for relationship advice, for inspiration, for a creative project, inspiration for our business, we tend to go to something new. But how about we just think about which decks we have or which books we have that could help us? Sometimes even like we have books that we don't read that we bought a year ago, and that's why we don't think of them, you know? We just want something new. Really getting honest with how you can fulfill that need with what you already have is kind of a minimalist mindset, I guess, but it can also be very helpful in limiting your deck collection to a set that you actually use, a set of tarot decks that you actually connect with and that you build deeper experiences with. Now, the third question, this is a very pertinent one to me, and the reason why I don't open or buy a lot of decks at the same time. Do you have the time for it? Do you have the time to do the deck justice? Because every deck has a period where you need to get used to it, where you have to do the research for it, you read the book, you look through the cards, and figuring out whether you actually have the time to do that and the mindset to do that is very important, I think, because maybe you just got another deck, or maybe you just got another book that you actually want to read, or maybe you have a new job that won't even let you have the time to explore a new deck. And can you actually integrate it into your spiritual practice, not just time-wise, but also theme-wise? There is this cyberpunk deck that I'm absolutely in love with. I love the art. I love the world that the person who made it constructed. But my practice, as of now, maybe that will change in the future, but it's not very futuristic or cyberpunk driven. The imagery touches something deep inside of me and I really love it. But in my practice, I'm a lot more grounded. It's a lot more about nature, connecting with plants, not necessarily thinking about a dystopian future, even though that is super cool and I love diving into these worlds. It's just not what will do the trick for my own psychological work with the tarot deck. So it can be very hard to be honest with yourself about whether you actually need a deck, and I totally get that. And these questions sort of help me, and they have definitely prevented me from buying some decks that I don't think would have quite cut it in my actual practice. Now, if you want to see some decks that I do love, I'm going to put some videos below that you can watch about walkthroughs. I did a walkthrough of the Shadowscapes Tarot, the Considerate Cat Tarot, the Wild Unknown Tarot, and I hope that maybe this inspired you to reflect on which deck you buy next and whether it actually needs to be in your collection and why you want it, etc., etc. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, do all the jazz if you feel like it. If you don't feel like it, that's fine. I always love it when people kind of dwell in my domain a little longer, so you're very welcome to. And I wish you the best of days, the best of No Deck Novembers if you watch it during the month. If not, happy deck buying, happy deck exploring, wish list fulfilling, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I love you all, and I'll see you next time.